So was the Spectrum the machine you started your programming?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, originally I was playing the games and it was like,
Yeah,
good, I like that.
yeah,
And then you sort of type some stuff in and then you make basic games and,
yeah.
you know, and then in about 1985-ish, when I was 15, a friend at school bet me £10 I couldn't learn machine code.
Right. Okay. So you took the
In fact,
bet.
even before that, I'd written a few quill adventures with a friend.
Yeah.
I I took one of them, which was called The Lost City, funnily enough, a bit like the new film,
Okay.
to Interceptor
Yeah.
and got turned down
Oh,
because they
right.
basically
Okay.
said we're only doing full price games at the moment and we don't do full price quill games.
Hmm.
Uh, so that was my first rejection there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've still got that as well.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's good. That's good.
Um, and then after that, I was like, well, I need to write, because in the letter it says if you learn machine code, we're going to have a budget label coming out soon. Because at that point, Interceptor was just called Interceptor Micros. It wasn't Players. It wasn't Pandora. It, and it wasn't even. They just kept it as Interceptor Micros. So, and because obviously down the road, because I lived in Tadley near Aldermaston. Now down the road from us was Cleaver Park, and Incentive Software were there. Thalamus were there.
Oh, okay.
Interceptor they're all in the same park. And Jeff Minter lived 2-3 roads down from me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it was all like it's the big sort of gaming town. Well,
Yeah.
village at that point. It was the biggest village in Britain because of the atomic weapons establishment.
Yeah.
Because obviously needed all the people, so they just made it bigger and bigger and bigger, but it stayed as a village, even though houses were built. So after that happened, a friend of mine called Rob bet me £10 I couldn't learn machine code in the school holidays. So I did. I never actually got the £10. I still have it. And I did my first game, which was, funnily enough, was called Denizen.
Okay.
But it's not the Denizen that people might have played.
Right.
It was more like Dandy, which is similar style to Denizen, but obviously I sort of borrowed the graphics a little bit because I wasn't very good at art.
Yeah.
And I took that to players, they had players at that point, Interceptor, and they said, well, you can't use someone else's graphics. I said, I know that. I mean, it was loosely based around Aliens, because obviously my favourite film.
Good choice. Good choice.
Yeah, yeah. But they gave me 250 quid, and they gave me an Opus Discovery and a monitor and a few other bits and bobs, and said, well, go away, and when you finish school, come and work for us. So I went away and I just carried on writing stuff.
Wow, that's brilliant.
So what happened then is I left school, and 2 weeks later I started working for them. I went in-house. And the first game I worked on was Clean-Up Service. It was a conversion from the Commodore 64. Now, clearly I wasn't that experienced at that point. So it didn't do too well. I didn't know anything about compression, and I had all the screens, had all the sort of sprites and stuff, but I just had no memory to do a lot of the code because everything else filled up the memory. So that ended up just being binned.
Okay.
So that never got released. I don't even know if I got the code. I might have somewhere. And so that's when I started working on a conversion of Riding the Rapids, which was actually my first game, which was released, which was in 1986 or 7.
Right. Okay.
Wasn't a brilliant game, but it was okay.
It was your
It
first
taught me
release.
a lot of things. It got you reused some of the code, a
Hmm.
few of the things like Dizzy Down the Rapids. Some of that code was sort of borrowed. And it sort of went from there, really. I just sort of started rolling through games as fast as possible because after about a year at Interceptor, they said, oh, because they diverse so quick because they own the local video shop. They had a distribution company and they made all the cassettes for Crash, I believe. You know, the winding for all the cassettes. I'm not positive about that one, but they did other magazines.
Hmm.
Not sure if it was Crash or your Sinclair. So they had their own tape distribution. They did their own artwork. They had a removals company. They just diversified way too big. And what happened was they started running out of money. So they basically sort of let everyone go, but said you can still work in the offices but freelance.
Right.
So most people, I think only the main programmer there was like employed as such. Everyone else was freelance.
Yeah.
So then I just started writing games, and it was literally after Riding the Rapids, I just rewrote Denizen as pretty much a rip-off of Aliens. So, and it was just like what it was so obvious it was Aliens because it had all like the dark areas, the sort of the aliens running around, the sort of the base all looked aliens-esque.
Yeah.
You can go up and down to sub-level 3 and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It literally had everything of that, and the baddie at the end looked like an alien, like a queen.
Yeah.
And they had, the little pods where the aliens came out, and so, and that was like it didn't go down brilliantly well with everybody, but it was something I wanted to write, so I just did.
Well, that's it. There's no hard rules, is there? So yeah.
Well, no, so I just literally started writing games as I wanted. It wasn't a case of getting a commission. It was a case of I'll write something and they'll just pay me X amount of money to do it. So I just kept doing that. So I rolled off quite a few. I did. When football came up, I ended up doing Super League.
Right.
Well, we know Football Manager sells because my brother was on it all the time.
Yeah.
So I did that in about 6 weeks, and it went to number 1 for quite a while.
Wow. Okay.
That was only a $1.99 game. It wasn't again brilliant, but it did the job.
They got to number 1.
Well, the World Cup came round the next year, so I thought, let's take good advantage of that. So I did that in probably about the same amount of time, using pretty much the same engine from World Cup Super League, and that went to number 1 as well. So, and then a few of the other games were just sort of spin-offs of things that were happening, because like Lop Ears, which was based on a rabbit, was sort of a Dizzy-esque style game.
Right.
So it was a case of do a sort of a puzzle game like Dizzy, but I'll just use a rabbit. And the main reason why it's a rabbit is because Colin Swinburne, probably shouldn't say this, used to watch the rabbits out the window where we were working, and he disappeared one day after a couple of his Joe Blade releases, and never saw him again.
All right, okay.
So, not seen him since.
Yeah.
So things like that. I mean, and obviously there are other games that inspired me, like Hawkstorm was a bit like Stormlord, and Hawkeye.
Yeah.
So it's like mix them together, Hawkstorm. Then we've got Shark, which was sort of like not Exelon, Cybernoid.
Yeah, okay.
Taskforce was a sort of the first version to be finished, but because I was writing Shark after with better graphics, we decided to change the name of the person who wrote it.
Oh, okay.
The main problem with that though was we called her Sonia Knight. And then we started getting phone calls from all the magazines asking to speak to her.
Right. I was going to ask you where the whole Sonya Knight came from.
It's because Shark came pretty much straight afterwards.
Right.
And somebody will, and because it was a similar style game.
Yeah.
We didn't want to sort of, because it would be like, oh, you've just written the same game and just reskinned it.
Ah, okay.
If you see what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, Shark was a lot bigger. I mean, it had 512 screens loaded over 2 sections and an end baddie. So that was a bit like Denizen, because that had like the main level, the sub level, and then so it was like that similar style. I mean, even Dominion, which was never released, again was based on Aliens, and it looked like the sideways version scrolling.
Right. Yeah.
That only ever came out on a cover tape, and it was never released because the company went bust.
Oh, okay. So it was never released, right?
No, only the demo came out. I think it was on your Sinclair.
Yeah.
And that was it.
But the full game was complete.
It wasn't finished,
right?
But it was a lot bigger than the cover tape. Put it that way.
Yeah, got ya.
So, and obviously things like I was working on multiple games at the same time. Like Joe Blade 4, I was working on.
Right.
That was like Spy vs Spy. You see, I like to get inspired by other people's games.
That's fine.
It was Joe Blade versus Saddam, and Saddam was running around on the bottom screen trying to plant traps, and you were in his bunker trying to catch him, basically.
Oh, brilliant.
So, but again, never got released, sadly. Maybe at some point, although I might have to change the name.
Yeah. Go back to it.
Well, technically, I don't really own the name. Colin Swinburne does, or well, possibly not. I don't know regarding rights-wise.
Yeah.
I mean, but yeah, there were plenty of others. I mean, obviously I worked for a bit for Cody's, but that was mainly because when I was doing Spike in Transylvania, they said, can you convert this from the Commodore 64? So I spent a few weeks converting it. And then the boss came in one day and says, what are you doing that for? He says, we lost that to Codemasters.
Oh, nightmare.
And I went, what? You didn't tell me. So I'd done all this work on it, so I just ran Codemasters up. I said, do you want a Spectrum version? And they said, yeah. So I just carried on working on it and just didn't tell him.
Right, okay, fair enough.
Well, it was very rare he came into the building at that point.
Yeah.
Because we had two buildings. We had like the programmer's building and the main building. And he usually stayed in the main building doing all the distribution and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and then I was working on Dominion, Joe Blade 4. I was working on the tennis game all at the same time. And it was all, I was waiting for graphics from various people. So it was a case of whoever sent me the graphics first is what I worked on. So, which sort of made sense. But then when the company went bust, it was like, oh, that's 3-4 games down the pan all at once.
So were you using the same sort of code for each game, but then you were just adapting it later, or?
When you've written a game in assembler, generally you can just reuse it on the next game. Obviously, if the game style's different, you'll need to write extra bits. But things like sprite routines and things like that, we got to the point where you optimized it so much that you could just use the same routine. You just pop it into your next. You might need to tweak it depending on if there's various, the sizes are different. You can just pass the size in or whatever. But it all uses the same system where you just disable the stack, you set the stack to the data, pop the data off the stack, put it to the screen, pop the data off the stack, put it to the screen, because that was the fastest method of doing sprite dumping, basically.
Right, okay.
Because popping off the stack is very quick. It was pretty much the same with the scrolling games. All the data was popped from the stack after the interrupt were disabled. So, but yeah, so a lot of the code is reusable. It's just, obviously, depending on the style, there might be other bits that needed writing.
Yeah.